Well, since it has been pretty much a year since the last episode, and I have mentioned this segment before on a community section post recently, it's time to do it once again with this album. Just for your purposes of enjoying this type of segment, here we go again. What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. This is going to be another episode onto a segment that I had not been coming back to since last year, but I am here to do it. This is going to be for episode number 3 for Sabotage Bad Albums, which is a segment of albums that I review that I consider, for my honest opinion, to be one of the worst albums of all time. And this album, for me, is no exception. And with that being said, I'm going to be reviewing the 2011 album by Morbid Angel entitled Illud Divinum Insanus. Illud Divinum Insanus has been targeted for a lot of reasons. And even later, there are people that do like this album for the better and to defend this album, and if you are one of these people, then that is no issue, no questions asked, good for you. I wanted to get into this album again in preparation for this review right here, so I had to listen to the album all the way through, and obviously from the title below this video, I wanted to get into this album. I wanted to have some more of a comfortable environment, but with this experience, this was one of the most difficult. This was released at the same time, same year as Lulu from Lou Reed and Metallica, which I had reviewed on the previous episode, so please check that out if you want to. Morbid Angel, I really do like this band for what they are worth in my time, and for me to become the metal fan that I am, and for me being open-minded, I wanted to try and have some purpose of why I wanted to review this album in this sort of matter. The reason why I really do not like this album, it is not because of the band's choice. I respect the choice of what they were going for. Most of this album was written by Trey, one of the guitar players, and from what I had listened to, the album did have some potential. But, you know, with the obvious thing, this is more of a compromise. It is a heavily focused way of trying something new, and I don't mind that whatsoever. But with this product, this execution, this is to me one of those experiments that felt very shallow, uncompromising, but in an uncomfortable way. Now, I do love some uncomfortable but greatly uncompromising, challenging, great music from other bands that were meant to sound those ways, but with Morbid Angel, I really do think this album was some experiments that I just can't accept enough. Don't get me wrong, there are some of these pieces of material that I did enjoy for a bit. I thought some of the instrumentation was pretty engaging, especially onto the heavier sounding tracks that they are packed with aggression and distorted guitars. This is the only album, too, to have Tim Young 4-session drumming work. And I've first heard of Tim from another band many years ago called Divine Heresy, and I really like his drumming. Very talented, and for me, an underrated metal drummer, got a lot of attack and precise skills, and a brilliant way of playing. The experimentalisms on here is where the downfall collides things down the drain. Tracks like Too Extreme to Destructos versus the Earth Attack, and you cannot forget Radicals. But I'll get to the tracks that I thought were passable. The tracks that I did like for what they were Blades for Baal and Nevermore and Beauty Meets Beast. I thought some of those guitar riffs were pretty strong. Some of them different than others, than just the fast-paced technicality and the menacing style. Some of the riffs were pretty groovy and effective, and even with these brilliant blazing guitar solos. But when I was really trying to focus on the album deeper, these kinds of industrial parts ruin it for me. Now, I do love bands that are in that industrial metal vein. I love Strapping Young Lad. I love some Ministry, Rammstein, and even Fear Factory, because those kinds of bands were presenting their own identity. But with Morbid Angel's case, I understand that people do like to be accepting this. After listening to this album, I just almost felt speechless of trying to focus on what I was going to say, and then you go to instrumentals that are so misplaced and all over the place to be completely uninspired. Radical, the main track that a lot of people do take the piss out of, these really uncompromising and awful ways of trying to get into what's going on, but it was such a big mess. Like on the last track, Profundus Mea Culpa, one of these obnoxious attempts to try and finish the album off very strongly. And even some of these lyrics, like on Radicult and Destructos versus the Earth Attack, uninspired, uninventive lyricisms. Another gripe that I have with the album, besides the tracks that I mentioned that I did like for a bit, is the production. The production is sometimes not easy to cope because the mixing, Tim Young's tone of the drums was that highly mixed and compressed. The triggered bass drums and the higher maximum volumes of Vincent's vocals, besides that his tone of his growls and grunts are pretty cool on this album, but it's the sound of the album was not comforting to me. The production on the previous albums were so much stronger and tighter, even on Altars of Madness, on the very raw sound of Blessed Are the Sick, Covenant. Those kinds of sounds of production on those Morbid Angel albums were worth a fantastic sound of quality and a listenable approach. Illud Divinum Insanus was something worth trying for, but at the end of the day, I never had seen the light at the end of the tunnel because I, over time, just felt really disconnected on these songwriting abilities that they were trying to redeem some substantial perfection, passable moments. I just never think of this kind of era and tone that would define Morbid Angel at one of their best and creative peaks. I can't really say anything else about this album that I wanted to say even more. Some of the heavy sounding tracks are decent. That's really all I would like to say about Morbid Angel's Illud Divinum Insanus. I actually did see a comment from one of the tracks down below, the videos of them, that some people say and agree that this is like the Saint Anger of death metal. But even for me to think about that, I would have stuck on Saint Anger and to try and accept that album more than this particular album. That's just me, that's my personal opinion. If you like this album, that is great. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.